Okay, everybody. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Hope you all had a restful Veterans Day weekend. Thank you, as always, for joining the campus conversation. Really, really appreciate it. Obviously, this is an event for you. It's by you. It's the things that you want to talk about. So grateful for all the inputs. I'd like to start with a couple of words of gratitude. So I want to thank Mike and Justin, who are here from the DMC. Thank you both for being a part of this. I want to say a special thank you to John Johnston and Kay Swader and all the wonderful people at the SU for hosting us here. I want to say a special thank you to Matt and to all of the folks who keep us safe from campus public safety. I want to say a special thank you to Don and all of the team from IT for everything that they do. And then all of our facilities and custodial staff and everyone else, our catering staff for the food. So thank you to all of them. Can we give them a round of applause? For those of you who are tuning in from elsewhere, if you want to send in a question, I don't know which camera is live, Justin, so I'm going to look here. The email address is just campus conversation, singular, campusconversation@sou.edu. And so we've got Janet and Mary Katie in the back who are going to be fielding your questions. I think, I don't know if Mike does this, or it may be at the bottom of your screen if you're watching at home. So campusconversation@sou.edu. Okay, here are the things maybe that we're going to talk about. I've got it memorized just in case. Okay. This is the longest, it's the longest list of topics that we've ever had for a campus conversation. Yeah, so that's a good sign. Either it means everyone's super pissed or we just have a lot of input. I think it's the latter. As what we do all the time, we're going to start with a kind of a recap of what we talked about last time. So you know this isn't just a one-off. We actually kind of keep following the issues that are important to you. We're really grateful to have Chris with us, our ASSOU Vice President, Student Body Vice President, who's going to share, I think, some of their goals for the year. It's always important to hear from our students. By the way, there are students in the audience too. Thank you for being here, part of this. We're going to talk about a budget update. I don't want to ever lose an opportunity to kind of keep you posted on where we're at financially as an institution. We're going to talk about the scissor and both phase 1 and phase 2. One, to kind of get an idea where we're at, but really to focus our energy on some challenges that I think a lot of folks are facing. And we want to just own those and talk about what we're planning on doing about those so that you know that that's not just in a vacuum, that we're actually making those steps. We're going to talk about SOU Forward and actually talk about the progress we made, and not just in a cost management piece, but we also owe you the other 3 planks of that to talk about how we're investing and actually putting ourselves and reimagining the fiscal model. And then we're going to finish, if all of that wasn't enough, we're going to finish by talking about a marketplace of ideas. We obviously have a lot of dialogue that's happened on the campus, off the campus, in the aftermath of elections. And so we want to talk about our role as a university and what that means and what we can do at our best. And we're also going to talk about, in addition to that, the campus environment that all of us want and deserve. And that we all have a role to play in creating that environment, one that's based on family and inclusivity and compassion and love and all of those things. We can do those 2 things at the same time. Okay. I might ask you, Don, is this ready, do you think? Okay, thank you. So last time we talked about the crisis in Gaza and the Middle East. I want to be very clear, and obviously students will be the first ones to tell us, it's not like that situation there has gotten better. Hasn't. Students are really still connected to that. They're very conscious of what's going on over there. What I'm going to ask, and this is for all of the faculty and staff in the room, I'm going to ask us, because I know that we're going to hear from students, and I know the students are going to share with us the things that they're feeling. But I also know that there are a lot of you in there, in this room, who will have a better finger on that pulse than I do. And as you feel like, hey, you know what, we need to probably think about having another gathering of students to allow them to kind of express what they're feeling, then let me know, because I want to stay ahead of that. When students feel that they have a voice, not feel, when they know that they have a voice and they can express their opinions, it matters. And I think that's what helped SOU navigate the last 13 months better than anyone. And I mean better than anyone. And it's because our students had that agency. So please keep us honest on that. Anyone want to talk anything else about that? Want to share? Okay. Reserve single fee. So we're going to talk about reserves in a second. We rolled out a single student consolidated student fee in this cycle. I will say that idea has really put us on the map in a good way. I think other institutions now are trying to do something similar, because before it, what students saw on their bill was a mess. And it was so difficult to understand. It's now a lot clearer what students are paying. So in terms of truth in advertising, I think it's a lot better. Now, where we landed on that fee was not perfect. And we had to try and figure that out. So likely between now and next fall, we will work on, okay, is it 8 hours or 6 hours before it flattens out? Is this the right number? We may have to adjust that fee. The pledge that we will give to our students is we're not going to let that change to the fee also then have an accompanying increase tuition-wise, right? So we have a limit, a delicate limit with the HEC in terms of tuition and fees inclusive. So if we do have to raise the student fee, then my direction to the tuition advisory committee will be to kind of create a cap so that we're not putting a double burden on students. Does everyone understand that? Does that make sense? Okay. Let me also point out that what we did in terms of the fee and the effect that had no change to our overall fiscal picture. So let me be very clear about that. Had no change to the overall fiscal picture. If we knew then what we know now, we likely would have changed that fee, but then that would have corresponded to a lower tuition increase for students. So ultimately, it's all in the wash together. Does that make sense? Okay, now what you've all been waiting for. It's my great honor to introduce Chris and Tiana, the ASSOU president. She is currently on a trip to our sister university in Guanajuato. So she wanted us to send her regrets. But her and Chris have really been on a roll, and your whole team, in developing some of the goals that they have for us for the new year. So with that, Chris.
Check. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, mom and dad. They're watching right now. Hope you guys are doing good. All right. So my name is Chris Gariak. I'm the ASSU vice president. I'm truly honored to be here. Thank you, President Rick Bailey, for all you've done. A little nervous right now, I'm gonna be honest.
You got this. You got this.
I'm pretty good at public speaking. I'm not used to this. Okay. So who here knows what ASSOU is? Oh, okay. That's more than normal. If you don't, we're the Associated Students of Southern Oregon University. We serve the student body and faculty and staff. Our main goals this year is we want to focus on bettering our campus safety connection. We want to focus on housing problems and university food access. So different from last year, we've created a thing called a task force, which we now have 3 different groups where we're going to really lock in and try to change certain things. So say it's university housing. Obviously, there's issues that always come up every year. But our goal now is to have these task forces, which are really going to be able to work tightly with the people who run the university housing or the Hawk as students that want to change for those certain things. So our goal is to, God, sorry, I'm so nervous.
Woo! You got this. You got this.
All right. But basically what we're going to try to do is we're going to work on a few little things. People have asked for like a communal kitchen. So we're going to slowly work on that. Work on hopefully hiring the Hawk, making the Hawk hours longer, because some students end class at 7:20 and the Hawk closes at 7:30. So they're not really able to get to the Hawk in time for food, and then they're having to go and buy food, which can increase their budget that they may have for the year, which can raise prices to a couple $100 extra per year, which isn't fair to them. In terms of our campus safety, we just want to create our better connection. We want to work on response times, as we feel like that's something that we need to better. That some people don't get, because they may be out of the office, but there is no real way to connect with them, which we need to make happen. And another thing is food access. So we have our sustainability, Director of Sustainability, Sierra right here. She's going to be working really hard on that to better our food, hopefully work with the farm a little bit more to get better food into the Hawk. And we also just want to work on a few little things with the Hawk, but that's something that our task force will focus on. Another thing we're doing right now is we're going to be going to Salem. Thanks to Mark, he's been a huge help with setting up all of this, and Rob. We're going to be going on March 4th. We're going to go and advocate in Salem on behalf of SOU to essentially, hopefully get more money for the school, and that will go towards needs that we've been hoping for a while. And we are currently starting up our committees, which there's at-large positions, which students are allowed to sit on. You do get a little small amount of money per month, but those are very important to us as FAC, the SFPC, as that is the student fee money. So the students that are on ASSU that are part of those committees are in charge of where your money goes. So if you sit on it, then you can essentially help with where that money goes. So it's very important, and you get a little stipend, which is nice. So far, we've accomplished a few things. We had our first movie night, which went wonderful. The sprinklers may have went off 2 minutes before the movie ended, but that made it more memorable. So we're a little happy, not too angry that happened. We currently encourage students to vote. Over the last week, we were tabling outside of the right inside the SU when the doors open, and we felt like that went really well, as we got a really good connection, and a lot of students passed by and said they already voted, which we think is very important. And another thing that we did is we added a rec center hours, thanks to Hughes. We added extra hours on Saturdays, which has been asked for students by a few years. So the fact that we were able to do that, and that was in the summer, we were working on that. So we created a really good connection with the rec center, and we're hoping going to continue to do that forward. Does anybody have any questions regarding the student body? Okay, that's a good or bad thing. I'll take it. It's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and let me know if you guys need anything.
Yeah,
thank you.
Perfect. It was an experiment gone wrong. Actually, we for that movie night, the goal was to try to make it realistic. They were watching Finding Nemo, so we thought that. Sorry for those at home. Big hand for Chris. You nailed it. You nailed it. That was fantastic. Okay. So it's always really hard to follow that with budget update. But let me get, this is just to make sure that everyone's kind of clear on where we're at. Kudos to Josh, because I still love this. We look at revenues and costs, and we look at the things that are part of revenues and costs. On the revenue side, tuition and fees, obviously state allocations. So thank you, Chris, and your team for going up and helping us in March. Grants, which we'll talk about in a little bit too, as one of our planks of our SOU Forward plan. Other income that we don't talk enough about, and I don't talk enough about, and I need to talk more about with you. Other income is a couple of things. Things like revenue diversification, which we're going to talk about, right? We've been behind the scenes still working on how we kind of get these other projects off the ground. Other income might be in how we leverage philanthropy, right? Our future vision will include endowed faculty positions, endowed chair positions, endowed staff positions, endowed programmatic funding, right? The more we do that, I think of that as that might as well be revenue, because those are costs that we don't have to pay for anymore. By the way, energy transformation, same thing, right? Costs that we can start paying less for or stop paying for. Costs on the right are pretty straightforward. It's personnel, it's benefits, and it's services and supplies. That's pretty much the cost. Okay. Last year there were 5. I'm adding a couple. 7 strategic level budget considerations for the upcoming fiscal year. Enrollment and retention, I think that's obviously, that's always going to be at the top of the list and needs to be. One of the things that I miss as the president sometimes is I kind of take this for granted because all of you are doing such amazing work, but I still need to talk about what it means for enrollment and retention, because that is the key to the ballgame for us. Unclassified staff. That is always still on the radar for us. We've talked about the 8% over 4 years, and that's still in the books. 1%, 1%, 3%, 3%. But we've also said that that's a floor, right? When we look at where our faculty and our classified staff are and how much they've advanced, we just haven't, as a university, we just haven't done the same for unclassified staff. So that's definitely a focus area for us, because that's about talent management, right? And holding on to good folks. We'll be starting with our friends at the faculty union into negotiations. I want to say that starts in the spring. So that's an FY26 consideration for sure. The scissor transition period, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But obviously we've got to have some kind of plus up, some kind of surge capacity to help us with the transition for these next couple of years. And that also leads to staff coverage, right? That's one of the things that we've heard about a lot is, as we've done that transition, there are processes, we'll talk about it in a minute, that are really broken right now that we've got to fix. And so how do we make sure that staff get the support that they need? Reserves, I don't want to stop talking about this. I think we need to have more in the bank for our institutions so that we're more resilient as an institution. Not so that we actually cut ourselves to the bone to do it, but I do think that we need to be thinking about how we make ourselves more resilient and make ourselves better equipped to handle things that are out of our control. And then the last one that I have recently had to add on there is state support. We always talk about that the state needs to see public higher education as a public good more than they do. We need to continue to share that message. Obviously, student voices are more important than any of ours in this conversation, but ultimately it's going to have to be a statewide collaboration. Student voices, faculty and staff, it's easy. We all embrace it. So it's not hard for us to advocate. But I think business community has to be on board. I think labor has to be on board. I think there has to be a consortium of people all speaking with one voice to talk about the importance of colleges and universities in the state. So we'll keep an eye on that. This is not to scare you, but I do want to share the state right now has about a $1.4 billion shortfall that it's looking at. There will be an updated, what do you call it? The fiscal, what's it? Economic forecast, thank you. That's coming out, I think soon, like this month sometime. From that, the governor will release a governor's recommended budget. That'll be sometime in December. And then the legislature, that's not the end of the game. Then the legislature, when they start in January, they'll start working on that process. We will continue to push hard because you deserve that. And we'll make sure that we're gonna keep the course there. Let me pause there. Let me ask Mark or Rob, anything else you want to add? Okay. Okay. This is complicated. I hope it's not too complicated, but I want to present the picture that we've given to the Board of Trustees. On the top is our current fiscal year. On the left side, those are our revenues, 66.44 million. On the right side, our costs, 68.32. There's a delta there of 1.88. That's not good. This is the message that I sent out to all of you that said, hey, there is a very, very strong argument that this is the result of the FAFSA, the late FAFSA rollout. And so we made the strategic decision that we should not just cut 20 more positions, that we need to look at, hey, this very well may be an anomaly. And it's something that we should kind of brace for and take a look at. So what we did with the board, that we dug up something that was in the works for 5 years and said, hey, we have these external properties that we don't have a plan on and won't in the future have a plan for, and now have authorization to sell some of those properties. It will far more than this cover that gap. By the way, and it's not selling every piece of land we have. It's taking a small percentage of that and selling that off. That was a strategic decision that I will own, because I think it's the right thing for us to do right now. What I would like to do is anything that goes over and above that, we should talk about putting that in the reserves so that we now have a little bit of a safety net for ourselves. FY26, FY27, Josh's model predicted something a little bit rosier. But what I did, because I want to be conservative, I asked Josh to force the model, assuming a 3% drop in enrollment for next year. Okay, we may be better than that, but if we're 3% down again, by the way, the FAFSA is late again. It's not going to be as late, but I think it's now next month coming out, so we're still going to have to play some catch up. So those are the numbers that it gets. Here's what happens. Let me just, I want to, so I don't, this isn't about just scaring you all to death. If we're flat next year, instead of 3% down, I changed these to green on purpose because we're still just a little bit under, but we're basically at the waterline. Okay. There are some things, that's why I don't want anyone panicking yet about 26 and 27. We'll cross those bridges when we get there. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help us move forward so that we're not dealing with this. Okay, let me pause there. Questions, comments, thoughts, recommendations, anything on budget? Yes, Luana. Oh. Hey, Luana, I'm sorry, hold on once. So the people at home can hear. Mary Katie and Bree have microphones and
Thank you.
we don't want to shortchange the viewers at home for catching your stuff.
A lot of what it seems like with the forecasting going forward has a lot to do with the federal legislation and grants being moved backwards and the students having more of a misunderstanding of where their assistance and help is coming from. How can we as an institution help with that when we see state legislation and funding going down as well? What is it that we as an institution can do to help that overall?
Yeah, Luana, thank you for the question. So I'm gonna spitball because there's so many different answers that are kind of flooding into my head on that. And by the way, let me open it up too if anyone has some other thoughts. So when I got here almost 3 years ago, that was like, hey, something's going on here, and the state isn't stepping up as much as it needs to do. We're putting more and more on students' backs. Like, that model just isn't sustainable. So what do we do about it? Part of it is, and you're scratching the surface on it, part of it is, how are we communicating with students about what we're doing to make their lives better, right? By the way, you do that great. But all of us kind of, what are the things that we all can participate in? If I think on a macro level, part of it is, how are we as an institution modeling that behavior? So we've said, hey, so it's always been state funding and tuition as our sources of revenue. Well, let's break that model down. Let's stop thinking about it in that way. What are other ways that we could help resource this institution? So that's why we said, well, our grants apparatus is problematic. We had actually gotten to a place where faculty and staff members, not only were they not incentivized to go after funding, but in some ways they were disincentivized to do it. Because we weren't making it easier for them. By the way, it's not like we fixed all this. This is in progress, right? And finding ways to help them bring more money in. Because when they bring more federal state dollars in, that helps everybody, right? How do we leverage philanthropy? So not just saying this because I saw Janet and Taylor and a whole bunch of advancement folks in here. 10 years ago, we were raising, on average, $2.5 million a year, fundraising wise. Today, we're averaging $10 million a year. And that's just 10 years. We've quadrupled. And Janet, and I know this is going to sound self-serving, has told me that that's pretty ridiculous how crazy that change has happened. Now, are we all feeling that yet? Right? No. But we're building a campaign that will start to bend that cost curve in a really significant way. Right? Those are kind of things. So the more and by the way, we haven't even talked about revenue diversification. Right? We're still moving forward on a senior living facility. We're still moving forward on a university business district. Rob has probably devoted 40% of his time. The rest of the time is telling me how to keep myself out of jail. For how we move those things forward, right? So we're behind the scenes. We're still moving and doing all of those things. Lastly, I'll say, how do we play a part? So 65, 70% of our revenues right now come from students. Right? We're trying to change that model. But it also means that every student matters. And by the way, I'm preaching to the choir. You all know this. We have to do two things. This is going to be a theme here. We have to do two things at the same time. One, we have to make sure that we are all cognizant of the standards. So I could say, hey, and look at Garima and Chris and others, like, hey, every student graduates. That's our goal now. Every student graduates. Doesn't matter what they do. Doesn't matter if they show up to class. Doesn't matter if they do their assignments. That would be us. That would be a dereliction, right? We have to help students. We have to make this educational journey matter, right? And like I said, you all do this so well. And at the same time, we have to know that every touch point that we have with students is an opportunity for them to thrive, or if we're not careful, it's an opportunity for them to kind of veer off the path. And so how do we do that? I'm going to put, Bree, could you hand Carrie, she said something this morning can you talk about your 15 students concept?
So I had shared, it's called Find Your 15, right? And so if every staff member, faculty found their 15 students, and this could be the 15 students you advise, it could be the club members that you are an advisor to, know their name, know their story. What the number one retention tool is a student feeling like somebody cares about them. And so if each of us could find our 15, that would really help move. And sometimes that could be helping that student take a break from school and then come back 6 months later or a year later. So where that off ramp, where they're taking the time that they need for themselves, they still feel supported and welcomed to return because that person is still going to care for them. So just find your 15.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people out there I already got the t-shirt on that, right? Yes. And we should celebrate that. If you're someone who doesn't know 15 students by their first name, then I'm going to ask that you connect with us and let's figure out a way to make that happen for you. And I know that'll make a difference. Yeah. This is something I brag about all the time because all of you do this so well. You really do. I had to, because we have so much to talk about, I left off some slides at the end that the cabinet was very happy that I left off. That the thing that binds this university together more than any place I've ever been, more than any unit I've ever served with, is love. It's the thing. So Mark is a baker. What's the stuff that you put in a recipe that helps keep things together? Love is the egg. That's the message for our home. Love is the egg. The binder, yes. It is something that I brag about all of you for a living. And it is so easy to do because every day that I've been here, every day I see examples of faculty members and the way they are sharing education with students, the staff members who are bending over backwards, students who are going out of their way to help each other thrive. It is awe-inspiring to me. And you do that so well. We just have to do a better job of sharing that story. So more to follow on that for sure. Okay. Let's talk about scissor and workload. Phase one. I'm going to separate this out between phase one and phase two. Hart's going to come up and share a few minutes about the phase two timeline. That's the student side of things. But what we've really heard from particularly the staff is that there are a lot of challenges with that system and things that we need to do better. Let me start with the mea culpa. So it was 2 years ago in one of these sessions that I shared a story about Gene Stallman. Does anyone remember the story? And the story went that Gene and I were on a trip to Portland, and we were doing some government relations work. And we were on our way back, and we were at the airport in Portland. For some reason, we had to fly back. And we were in the airport, and it took her an hour and a half waiting for the flight. And she was just doing for a 2-day trip, doing the receipts and the reimbursement. And it took her an hour and a half. And my pitch to everyone was, hey, imagine if she had that time back, what it would be like. And it doesn't matter what she did, even if she just FaceTimed with her grandbaby or had a Bloody Mary, like it didn't, I'm okay, whatever. But if she had that time back, it would really matter. The vision hasn't changed. So that's still going to happen. Bloody Mary aside, that she's going to have the opportunity to do that. What I didn't do well enough is to say, it's not like phase one starts and now all of a sudden that's fixed. What I should have said is, hey, this is a journey. And anytime you go through change management, by the way, I don't know if Sarah Frank is watching, but this is something that she is very clear to kind of teach. Anytime you're doing change management, there's a cycle to it, and it's problematic. I didn't do a good enough job of kind of emotionally preparing us for what that transition would be like. So that's on me. But the vision is still the same, and it still will do the things that we want to do. But in the meantime, we have to say, okay, what are the things that are not working? If I ask show of hands, and by the way, let's just do it. Show of hands, since the adoption of phase one of Workday, how many of you have actually found your job harder, not easier? Okay, look around. Okay, that's a thing. That's real. So we've got to figure out how to diagnose that and then fix the things that are there. By the way, kudos to Mary Katie on this, because it's not just about the remedies. It's not just about fixing the problems. It's about how do you all know that those problems got fixed, right? How do you know that your life is going to get easier? Because I can speak all day in platitudes, but it doesn't matter if you're not getting the information on how those things are changing. I want us to, at least even in the middle of the challenges, to know that this is going to be worth it on the other end. And Workday is set up so that it's more malleable than Banner was. We can fix the things that we're not happy with. We can fix processes to make it what it needs to be for us. Here's an example. So we started reaching out to supervisors, stakeholders, and we said, hey, what are the challenges that you're seeing so far? This is not an exhaustive list. This just shows you some of the things that we have heard so far that are already now being addressed. What I know Mary Katie and what I know all of you will hold us to is, as we're starting to pick these things off with process improvements, we'll make sure that there is a way for us to share that feedback with you. Anything else I should add there? Okay. If you don't see, I said this is some. If there are other big sweeping things that are not on this list, that are phase one Workday things, please where's Peter at? Yes. Peter, I said, hey, Peter, how do we get, if there's something that we don't have? Peter was very gracious, like, let him know. So, and if you can't get a hold of Peter, get a hold of us. Let us know so we can add it to this list and make sure that we're actually attacking the things that we need to do. Jackie. Oh, Peter Angstad. For all of you at home, I'm going to give you Peter's personal email. And yes, if you don't have it, come back. It's Peter Angstad, Angstadt. Thank you, Jackie. Okay. Any other, before I turn it over to Hart, questions on phase one? And Bree, do you have the mic?
Is there a place where we can see the ongoing list so that we're not double?
Yeah. It's a good question. So Peter right now has that list. We sat down literally before this and said, okay, what are the big ones? I would ask, maybe it's something we can work on, Peter, like a list that basically this is our running list so far. It might tab into what we're actually fixing. And okay, keep me honest on that. Yes, Anna, hold on one sec. Got this.
So I'm just thinking, I'm not used to a microphone. If you are going to have a list that is transparent and easy for us to see, it could help with the communication as things are being fixed, that there's that list also has how it was fixed, when it was fixed, and like that information is just continuously there.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I think that's a great idea. It kind of fits into Stacy's issue too. Yeah, Taylor.
Yeah, Rick. On the previous slide, you had challenges and solutions, and I'm curious to know what some of the solutions are going to be and how we're going to address, because a lot of the challenges we're facing are big challenges that are going to require more bandwidth to get over that hump.
Yeah. So let me start. And where's Bree? Oh, I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to ask Mary Katie to bring a microphone back to Peter, because I'll start this, Peter, and then let you, because it's a really good question, Taylor. So this list we've now given to Alchemy. That's the company that's helping us with the transition. They are, I don't want to speak for them. I'll say they're very interested in, and they have a vested interest in making sure this goes well. So they are already committed to how they're going to help us refine processes to make this better. In addition, we do have some of our own superstar IT team that have discovered that some of these things are actually shorter fixes that they can do in-house, and maybe have already even started to do that. So that's a good. So those we can pick off quicker. And then I would say this is partly scissor, but it's also partly just the staff workload issue that we're looking at. Because some of this are things that we shouldn't necessarily plus up and hire full-time staff when we know that 2 years from now, it's not fair to them, right? 2 years from now, we're not going to need that help. So we're looking at how do we use overtime? How do we use temporary surge capacity? How do we do these other things to help us kind of bridge the gap? So I think all of those things are on the table as we do it. Peter, anything else?
Yeah, I don't know if I can add too much more to that, but when we did contact Scissor, or not Scissor, but Alchemy, several weeks ago and said, this is not working for us. Alchemy said, okay, tell us what's going on. We want to make it right, and we're going to make it right. So we're working with them right now. We've scheduled a meeting, I believe, next Monday, where they're going to share with me what team members they have available, what they think they can do, since they already looked at that first set of concerns. But if you have other concerns, please keep sending them in. And you don't just get one chance. If you sent in a concern and then later you find something else isn't working for you, well, let us know again.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I really, one takeaway for us here is between Stacy and Anna, the comment about how we share that feedback. Here are the list of ongoing issues that we have. So if your issue isn't on it, then you know that that it's not on our radar. And then to your point, knowing that something is fixed. And ideally, it's not just a matter of a spreadsheet with something fixed. I think this was Mary Katie's point. It's also about what is that new process now, right? How do we make sure everyone understands that new process? And here's how to make it easier now for you. If we don't close the loop, that's a challenge. Okay, Hart, over to you.
Thanks. So I can actually speak a little bit to this too, because I spoke with the managing director at Alchemy this morning, who was on the receiving end of this list of things. And what he said was, for instance, about the P card, just so everybody has a chance to know, that he said, when we went live, that element wasn't really ready. And so there was all the background, like training materials and documentation and how to do this didn't go out. So one of the things that we told him was that, well, there were like 75 P card transactions that were sent in, and 71 had to be sent back because they hadn't been done correctly. So he says that's low-hanging fruit for us to develop the documentation and the training materials that people need to have going forward so they can do it correctly in the first place. He said, no wonder you guys are going crazy. So they'll be working through that stuff. Did you give me a slide? Okay. Just a very quick overview today, what we're doing. We started in June. Prior to June, there was a lot of conversation about how we're going to do this, what are your basic things, and all that good stuff. In June, we got an actual instance of Workday Student and started getting to work on it. So we have been building and testing and building and testing and building and testing, and that's going to continue all the way through until we're done in quotes, big quotes, in September of 2026. So when we get to next September, which used to sound like a long time from now, but now it doesn't so much, we will be doing all recruiting for the following year in Workday Student. And so anybody who wants to come to SOU will be interacting with Workday Student from that get-go. And then we're going to continue to test after that. And then when we get to the following spring, April of 26, students are going to be registering for fall term courses in Workday, and we'll be advising in Workday Student, and we're going to be doing all of our stuff pretty much then. When we get to September, basically all the background stuff that wasn't necessary for those first operations, those will all be finished and finalized too. So as you can imagine, we'll do a little training. We'll have some conversations about Workday Student, how you do what you're doing. I would encourage you to go to the project website, which is sou.edu/CISR, CISR. And we have on one of the tabs, it used to be that when you went there, the very front page was, how do I do this in Workday? And now it's shifted over to, what is Workday Student and why are we here? But there's a new page that's linked up at the top that says Learn Workday. And at the bottom of the list is a link for some sample training videos. So if you want to see what Workday Student looks like at somebody else's school, so it's not branded for us, it's not our processes, it's not our stuff, but it will give you an idea of what Workday Student looks like. So I really recommend that you get a couple of those training videos and see what's there. I would really like to give a huge shout out to all the people in this room right now who are killing themselves on Workday Student, and would you stand up? Come on, up, up, up.
Yes,
up, up,
thank
up.
you.
Thank you. And everybody else is in a meeting.
Yes, thank you. Hey, can we also do this? So in addition, thank you, Hart. In addition to that group, I buried the lead. I should have said this. All of the people who worked on phase 1 also worked their tails off. And the challenges that we're facing are not a reflection of the work that they did. So let me just say, they really went to bat for all of us. It's on us in terms of how we're implementing, and this is normal. We'll fix all the things that we need to do. So can I ask everyone, yes, thank you. Can I ask everyone who was in phase 1 to please stand, who helped us with phase 1? So let's thank all of those people too. Okay. Okay, I know that some people have to go, so I'm gonna try to make this very quick. SOU Forward had 4 planks to it. The first one was the one that got a lot of attention, and that was the cost management. And it was difficult, and it was awful. Because of this team and because of everyone's voice, we actually we're able to leverage vacant positions. We were able to find early retirement options for people. We were really, really careful about trying to limit the number of people who were non-voluntarily separated from this institution, and we were successful in that. What I want to do today is also talk. A lot of you saw probably a message that went out from me a couple weeks ago. And I have to own this. When we got to the welcome back breakfast, I said, "Hey, everyone! Here's all the new people that are here for the institution," and I wanted to take a moment to welcome them because I think it's important for us to welcome new people into this team. What I clearly did not make as clear was that these were all not new. These were not new positions. These were folks who either replaced someone else. They're folks who were brought in as part of a grant program or other funding. So there are 95 new people here that are part of our team now that were not part of SOU before March of 2023. And you can see the breakdown in the what we have. So 3 are actually new positions. 52 replace someone else, and 40 are funded by a grant. So 92 of those positions have no impact on our fiscal health. So I need to do a better job of sharing that kind of information with you, and I will endeavor to do that as we move forward. Yes, Anna.
So you say that has no impact on our financial health, but searching for all those positions costs money and takes a lot of our time. And I'm concerned about the 52 positions that turned over in that very short amount of time.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I stand corrected on that. You're right, because that's a time and resource issue. So there are a lot of things that weigh into that, right? One of them is workload. One of them is compensation. One of them is environment. One of them is culture, right? How do we make sure that we are retaining talent here? I think that's an ongoing issue, and that's ultimately on me. So that's something that I think as a team we will definitely endeavor to do. Thank you for that. Okay, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. We'll continue to advance on the revenue projects too. So anyone who's been by Cascade lately has probably seen the abatement on that facility already happening. The actual demolition will start in earnest in January. And so it's kind of clearing the ground for us to explore that public-private partnership for the senior living facility. That and the University Business District, our goal is to cut a ribbon on both of those projects by fall of 2027. So that means everything has to happen. That's why we're working so hard now to make that happen. It's not that those things are going to change everything and that it's going to solve all of our problems forever. It just means that we're moving to change that fiscal model. And I think those things are going to be a net positive for us. Any other questions, comments on that? Okay. The last one I'm actually going to pull the chair up for. So obviously, we've had a lot happen in the national scene and the regional scene over the last week. I want to take a moment to talk about the marketplace of ideas, and in doing so, I think there's 3 big points here. And a question for you. I think a diversity of opinions is healthy. I think it's healthy for us. We have students, faculty, and staff who are very progressive in their views here. And we also have students, faculty, and staff who are fairly, if not completely, conservative in the way they think. And by the way, it's an unfair description because it's not necessarily two-dimensional. Political opinions are far more complicated than that. But it is something that is why universities are so important. This is the place. This is the place for us to have conversations, particularly on topics about which not everyone agrees. I've been trying to write this quote that I would put somewhere, but I don't know. It goes something like this: the strength of the American democracy lies not in our propensity to agree. The strength of the American democracy lies in our willingness as community members to come together to have a robust dialogue on topics, particularly topics about which we don't agree. That's the strength of the democracy. Now, easy for me to say, right? We've had there's a lot of conversations going on at every level. And I know there's a lot of emotion out there too. So I think there's two things that we should do at once. This is that theme again. On one hand, we have to celebrate the marketplace of ideas. On one hand, this is what universities do when they're at their best. We welcome a variety of conversations and we do it in a civil way. This is the place where that should happen. The only other place as important for this to happen in American society, in my opinion, legislatures. Because legislatures have to write laws and they have to figure that stuff out. But the other place in our society for this to happen is a university. That's on one side, marketplace of ideas. At the same time, we have to be willing to commit as an institution to things that are part of our identity, no matter what the political winds look like. I'll give you an example. Words like inclusivity, words like toleration, words like compassion, words like equity. Those are not four-letter words. They are part of our identity as an institution. So when we think about things like LGBTQ rights, for example, when we think about DACA students, for example, when we think about members of our own family, we can, independent of politics, say, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe in. And it's not just something that we do, it's part of who we are. We have to do both of those things at the same time. And I know that's easier said than done, but I know we can do that. And ultimately, no matter what happens at other levels in government, we can create the environment here that all of you want and deserve, that all of us want and deserve. There was a really good, thoughtful conversation this morning with the cabinet about, hey, we can do that and we can create this bubble for ourselves, but what happens when people walk outside this campus? That's real. And I don't have an answer for everything that happens beyond our campus. So I want us to focus at minimum on what we are doing here for each other. Part of that is just how we deal with each other, how we take care of each other, how we treat each other. This is one of the slides that I deleted, and I know we're at time. I talked about love and how important it is for us. And it hit me that, there are people in this room, and you know who you are, that we've had some very spirited debates on things. Very spirited. And I know that there are people that you've had spirited debates with. But I have also seen that when someone loses a family member, or someone who has a life-threatening illness, all of those things melt away like that. And everyone now is whatever they have to do to help support each other. I've seen it. You've seen it. There's something magical about that. We need to continue to celebrate that and make that who we are and who we stand for. Okay. Yes, thank you. So that said, maybe this will spark the dialogue. What are the things that we can do as an institution, independent of politics or partisanship or any of that, to help move us closer to the environment that we all want and deserve? You don't have to answer it now, but I'd ask you to think about that. Okay. If you have topics that you're excited about for next session, please email them to Mary Katie at President's Office, plural, President's Office. Sorry, minus the apostrophe. And we are looking for, I think March will be our next campus conversation. Final thoughts from anyone? Or does everyone just want to get the heck out of here? Okay. Anything from online? Okay. I don't say this lightly. I have a lot of love for all of you. Thank you for what you do for our students. Thank you for what you do for each other. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.